Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Heavy Metallurgy Album Club. It's Wednesday. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Marty. Good to see you. Hope you're all doing well. We're down a guy again tonight, but that's okay. We can rock this one as a power trio all day long. And Jim, how are you?
Doing good. Super glad it's a short work week, and we're back on Wednesday night where things are good, and we forget about what we do 8 hours a day for money. I have to turn around and grab my records. Hold on a minute. Okay. So this week, one of those kind of things like glaring omission in my collection that I finally got around to getting. Fulgen's horrified. Some of Michigan's own sons there, Marty.
Yep.
We don't need to say anything about this. Everybody knows how essential this is, and it's great to revisit and good to finally have this on vinyl in my collection. I'm happy to pick that up. Alcest, the Souvenirs, the first album. I know the second one gets a lot of love, but I think the first one's great too. Some people don't like the sort of softness that this inserted into the genre, but I really love this record. I think it's very emotive and really cool, like moody cover. But yeah, Alcest, I think they're awesome. So glad to jam on that again this week and get that on vinyl as well. I've been meaning to get that for many years. I just never got around to it. And here is some Polish black metal demos here from Nimbifer. This has got their first and second demos on it on vinyl. Really good, dirty, raw black metal, the way I like it. Kind of like the speed of early Dark Throne, but not aping their riffs. They kind of have a nice maelstrom of riff sounds going here to keep it interesting. And their record that came out, I believe, last year, that their full length I have is also awesome. So Nimbifer, really dig these guys. Hails to Kellen on that. He's the guy who put Nimbifer on their radar, and it came this little card here and has something there that I don't know what it means, but I always like getting like weird little things in records, don't you?
Yes.
Fun.
John is asking if that's on Vendetta.
Yes, it is. It is on Vendetta. Yep. Yep. So yeah, I'd highly recommend this and their full length. Good stuff. Cool. And wow, I feel like I went through that too fast, but that's what I've been spending this week.
Right on. Good pile of stuff. Logan, how about you?
Yeah, been doing pretty good. Been to a couple concerts this week. On Saturday, I had the chance to see the band we're about to talk about, as well as Crowbar and Thou in concert. A lot of New Orleans in one night. It was awesome. It was epic. Yeah, got a lot of riffs for sure.
Yeah.
And then last night, I had the chance to see Bruce Dickinson doing his solo Mandrake Project tour, and I'm not as familiar with the Bruce Dickinson solo material as I would like. Really only know Chemical Wedding fairly well, but I was blown away. Any chance you get to see Bruce Dickinson, I think you should go for it, especially in these smaller venues. I'd say it's worth it. And he pulls out a deep cut from this album, so I was spinning this today as well. He pulls out Flash of the Blade. And believe me, it's worth the price of the ticket just to hear the guitar solo in the middle of this song and, hear Bruce sing the chorus and stuff. And coincidentally, this is this album's 41st birthday today. It was released September 3rd, 1984.
Wow.
So, yeah, time flies, huh?
Oh,
nice. It was meant to be. You discussed that one.
Yeah.
I took it as a sign for sure. But yeah, honestly, I think my second favorite Iron Maiden album right here. I think it's objectively the best. Take that as you will. I mean,
I'm kind of with you. Like, Power Slaves was my favorite for a long time and objectively the best. But I think It's always been kind of back and forth with somewhat time for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm Seventh
and
Son is mine.
like ask me every other week and I'll tell you something different. But I think this week it's like Somewhere in Time's my favorite, but Power Slave is the best. Like that's kind of how I see it. Yeah.
Power Slave just has this consistency to it.
Oh my God, it's so consistent, man.
Yeah.
And Flash of the Blade is one of me and Marty's favorite Maiden songs, so I'm super jealous. Good to
Hell
hear
yeah.
that.
Dude.
Yeah.
If anyone has a chance to see Bruce on the solo run, go for it for sure. And then I'm hopping on the Paradise Lost hype train. We got a new Paradise Lost album in September 19th. Ascension, I believe. And I actually am more of a fan of the last 4 or 5 albums than their classic catalog, mainly just because that's what I've been listening to for longer. I just recently got this within the past couple of years, and I will say for Icon, the vocals have always been a little tough for me, a little too James Hetfield-ish, kind of. Like I had to kind of get past that, but some of the songs here and guitar melodies just sell the record still for me. So I've been clicking with Icon a lot this past week. And then I did some record shopping over the holiday weekend. Went down to Sisters in Christ here in New Orleans. Got a favorite from 2019, Inter Arma's Soul for English. I know this is a favorite Kellen record too, so figured I'd show it off. Excited to finally have a record version of this. Mammoth, Sludge, Doom, Death. There's moments on here where it's like literal Morbid Angel from the Covenant era. And then there's moments on here where it sounds like it's, Americana, Neil Young stuff. So they do impressive work running the gambit of genres. And then finally closing off with some just super dirgy sludge. Come to Grief by Grief. This is literally like an hour of, like this album at its slowest, just multiply that by a full hour-long runtime. That's this album. So I was definitely trying to hit my sludge quota this week, and I think I made it, maybe exceeded it. But
right on. Yeah. Well, I have not hit my sludge quota this week, that's for sure. Rarely listen to it anymore, but we'll get into that later. But I just started off. I've been listening to a bunch of music, farting around and just pulling out. Went into my box of promos and just started grabbing stuff. But this one went on the player a couple times, and it's Australia's Pestilential Shadows with In Memoriam Ill Omen. This is their 3rd album, came out in 2009. Is that right? 2009, yes. This band is a black metal band from Australia. They've been around for, well, I got the page up, I can tell you. They've been around since 2003. And still putting out records, and I think they're kind of seen as one of the leading black metal bands in Australia. Really good stuff though. It's fast, it's really melodic. It kind of wants to be Emperor, but it's just too different to be that. It's just really solid, well played black metal with a full band. It isn't drum machines or anything like that. It's just really well done, excellent. I only have a handful of their albums, but they've always been a band I've enjoyed. I know another band that's well regarded, veterans of the scene, is Nazgul or whatever. So I don't know. There's such an incestual scene. There's got to be members being shared from all those guys for sure. Been a big week last week for new releases for me. The latest Monogarm arrived on the day of its release, and the name of this is look it up. I don't know. I can't. I'm not Swedish, so I can't. This is the band's 30th anniversary album, and for going this long into it and as many albums as they have what, 15 or 16 albums now. Still super solid. They sound great. Yep. Thanks.
I know they had that many.
It's a bunch. They've got a bunch. Maybe it's 13 or 14. I don't know. It's in the teens. But Viking metal. They kind of started off a little bit more raw, a little more black metal, with some folk flourishes, a lot of violin throughout their entire career. Now they're a little bit more. I think they've they still have the black metal edge to them with Eric's vocals at times, but they've really leaned into the Viking side of their sound. There's a lot. This album they wanted it to be a mix of all their eras. So there's a lot of folk. There's a lot of just straight up acoustic songs with ladies singing on it, and it's just a well mixed, good record. It sounds like Monogarm, and this long in, and they're still putting out really good, solid stuff. I like the folk stuff as just as much as the metal on this record. But yeah, I need to spend a little more time with it, but it's a good record. Check it out. And of course, this came in New Halloween, Giants and Monsters, and got the vinyl, and I got the earbook, 2 CD earbook, which this is ridiculous. It really is. There is like a book in here. There are so many pictures, and like this triple fold out thing. It's an impressive package. We'll just say that. But to get this, I got this because of the bonus track Out of Control, and it's got 3 different versions of Into the Sun, different singers, an acoustic version. I mean, it's just excessive. It's excessive. I didn't need this, especially when the Out of Control song is on the vinyl as well. So it's like, damn it, I spent way too much money on this. But I will say, I'm glad I got it. The vinyl doesn't sound, towards the end of each side, it starts to sound a little jumbled, like maybe they put too much music on one side, but I don't know. It sounds way better than the compressed files we got for the promo. So that was kind of refreshing to hear it. There's a little bit more depth and beef in the drums, which is nice. I'm about to sneeze. It's stuck.
Bless you. Marty,
So,
I
yeah.
just had an image of you trying to listen to that CD book in the car, and like being in a traffic light, trying to flip through the pages to find the CD to put in.
Nah, I probably won't take it in the car. It'll just get messed up somehow. I'll just listen to it streaming.
So it doesn't seem practical for the car rides.
Yeah, and one last thing, Brian Arkham. Some of you will remember him from his own channel. He used to have his own channel. He kind of, I think, killed it. He's part of the Sadder Slay crew over at Dreadful Minutes with Rick and Jeff and those guys. But he sent me a package out of nowhere because he's a super nice guy. He sent me Oblivion album, Cyber Void. This is a Canadian thrash band, technical proggy thrash band. And I'm not sure exactly which album number this is, but first I've heard it and I listened to it last night. It's very modern sounding. It feels like this would be a later, this was reissued in 2024 under license from Oblivion themselves on Floga Records. So the pressing sounds really good. It's just the band is a little less thrash. I did hear an earlier album of theirs, and it was pretty technical thrash. This is a little less thrashy, a little bit more Fear Factory, kind of like if Thrash and Helmet and Fear Factory all got together. I don't know. It's a weird, clean sound, but I ended up kind of liking it. Yeah, thanks, Brian. Appreciate you, man. Thanks a bunch. But today, and of course, I've been listening to tonight's homework, which is the 1996 third album from EYEHATEGOD called Dopesick. For those of you who do not know anything about EYEHATEGOD, EYEHATEGOD is an American sludge metal band from New Orleans, Louisiana, who formed in 1988. They become one of the better known bands to emerge from the NOLA metal scene. Their core lineup has remained consistent since the band's inception, with the exception of the bassist, the role of which has been filled by several musicians over the years, until the death of drummer Joey LaCaza in 2013. As of 2021, the band has released 6 studio albums. So yeah, we're talking about a long-standing sludge band that's still active today after a bit of a break, I believe. And first impressions, Jim.
Yeah, I hadn't heard this specifically. And I say it that way because I have seen EYEHATEGOD live before, and I really wasn't into it back in the day. You know, Sludge for me is very limit my exposure to it. And outside of like doing reviews and stuff like that for worm gear and stuff, very little outside of Crowbar, which I love Crowbar. I have a lot of their records and stuff. For Crowbar, I just kind of connect with these guys, and Soylent Green and who in sound sort of remind me of one another, were always tougher for me to get into. I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe it was just because like the Sabbathy kind of thing. Just it didn't have when I first had the exposure to the stuff, like it just didn't have enough momentum for me. I was way more into death metal and just and fast thrash and things like that. So, but with time, comes changes and more open-mindedness, and through the intervening years, I listened to a lot more doom metal really now than I ever have, and so this being sludge with a lot of doom infected into it, I connected with it way more than I thought I would, and I think what helped me this week was here and there, and it's not everywhere on this album, but there are some Trouble isms, and I love Trouble. Trouble is a band that I've been into since the 80s. Well, actually, probably 1990, I guess, is when I really got into them. But anyway, but I really love Trouble, and there were just a couple moments on here where I just really heard that, and it kind of took me back, and it sort of opened up my mental neuron pathways or whatever to sort of embracing their sound, taking it in. And then it was on subsequent spins, I kept hearing moments that I really liked, just really cool riffs here and there. Good drum work, a good drum sound. I do think the vocals get repetitive for me, and but we'll talk about all that later. But overall, I feel like it was a nice surprise, and I definitely enjoyed it more than I thought I would. So.
You know what? My thoughts mirror Jim's almost to the T. And this isn't the first I've heard this album. Of course, this and the album before I got back in the day when they came out as promos. So I've spent some time with these first couple records, and I've never disliked it. In fact, I've had a very, very brief. I don't mind Sludge, like Grief, the record that Logan held. I have that record and one or two of their other albums that I've hung on to over the years, and bands like Crowbar. I've had Obedience Through Suffering in the past, and another one, and I like this stuff. It's heavy. I listened to Dopesick now. It's been since it came out since I've heard this record. So, but I'm surprised. First of all, I did enjoy the fact that they never get so lost in the weeds as far as like the noise aspect of what sludge could be. That the songs do stand up on their own. The riffs are really good. They're solid. They got that Southern groove going, which it's heavy, a little bit of Sabbath, a little bit of Trouble, a little bit of, someone mentioned St. Vitus, all that shit. It's all kind of interlocked. But the whole, we'll get into that. We'll talk about this. I won't go there. We'll wait until Logan's question, but, yeah, in Mike's voice, I would agree is a little bit dimensionless, but the fact that he kind of sounds like a lesser version of Blaine Cook from The Accused, that was kind of an in for me. I'm like, okay, he's got that sort of higher pitch kind of nastiness that Blaine does, and so yeah, I mean, this is an album that I've kind of went in dreading because I'm just not in the mood. And it isn't because I don't like the stuff. I am not in the mood for it. And if I'm not in the mood for it, as we all know, you sit, you go somewhere with somebody that doesn't like what you like and they listen to it on the radio. It's like, oh God, it makes the trip that much longer. But you know what? It was good to be reminded that it was a good record, and it had been so long. It was like hearing the record again for the first time. But Logan, what about you?
Yeah, this is was one of my early on like kind of sludge records, and for better or worse, I like went from Downs Nola and Corrosion of Conformity's Deliverance to this, and this was very much night and day, like light infatuation with weed going straight into the hard stuff, right? Not like very much more intense listen, and it definitely took me a couple of years to really like kind of click with it. But honestly, sometimes records that you have to work at and really like keep revisiting, those are the more long-term records that stick with you, and that kind of don't go out of being your favorites. You know, they never end up being, oh well, I just like that for the nostalgia reason. Like I still actively listen to this album and this band pretty avidly to this day. Like, you know, I was prepping to see them this past Saturday, and you know, throwing on a bunch of extra spins with this album for tonight was, it felt like no extra work. You know, what's an extra 10 listens upon God knows how many. um I was definitely curious about your guys' take and opinion for this album, because I was hoping that like the punk influence could be obvious enough that maybe Marty, you would kind of glum onto it. And
Oh,
you
that's
already
what I.
mentioned the
Well, we're gonna.
accused.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, I'm jumping ahead of
yeah.
myself, but yeah, and honestly, I think they're one of those bands where they do wear their influences pretty heavily on their sleeves, and I've always enjoyed that about them. It seems pretty obvious where they're taking from, but I do think they take it, at least for the early '90s, in a fairly unique direction. I mean, their debut, "In the Name of Suffering," came out in 1990, and I don't know who else was sounding, you know, yeah, like that on an album. But I always thought like Melvins and Black Sabbath with Black Flag is always the other, you know, band I would hear tossed into that mix. So Trouble was a new one to think about, but I definitely could see some Trouble riffs on here.
I
So
think Black Flag. You know, I've seen that in the chat a few times too. I don't hear a lot of Black Flag. Greg Ginn's riffing style was very angular and
mhm.
almost sounded wrong. I mean, it was right to him because he could play the same thing over and over again, but it sounded like he picked all the wrong notes and play them instead of the right notes. You know what I mean? It at times, you know, that was kind of the Black Flag thing. They'd go in and out of that hardcore thing into this weird angular. Oh, those notes just sound like nails on the chalkboard type of thing. But anyway, go ahead.
Maybe it's pulled and used as a influence just because of, you know, My War and how it went from the speed and the momentum of the hardcore punk sound into this dirgy, basically sludge like second half, you know?
And maybe part of it too is the guitar tone, because if
Yeah.
you listen to like, you know, parts of Damaged, the album Damaged, like the opening track on Damaged, that guitar sound sounds kind of like the guitar sound on this I Hate God record, except the I Hate God adaptation's a bit heavier, a bit
A
thicker,
bit
you know.
heavier, but like the feedback and stuff is kind
Yeah,
of still there.
yeah.
Yeah. So no, I was just super excited to explore this with y'all, and I think this is a high watermark for the NOLA sludge scene, and kind of showcases the habits, and you know, it showcases what the NOLA sludge scene does well to me. So definitely excited to talk more. And then for my question, we've kind of already like started talking about it. I was mainly wanting to get your perspective, since you guys were around when this album came out, when the whole sludge scene, you know, bursted on, I guess, to the metal scene. I don't even really know if it was like a big to do when everyone was dropping these albums, like if magazines heralded it as the next big thing, or if it was kind of a, you know, didn't it was swept under the rug. But I just, from your perspective, how did sludge, the NOLA scene in particular, initially gain traction in the world of metal in the 90s? Did it make sense to you, and did sludge and the other genres of metal, like the more extreme ones, make good bedfellows?
Go ahead, Jim.
Get off of mute there. How did it gain traction initially in the world of metal in the 90s? If we're talking in general, you know, for someone who wasn't a part of the scene at all, I mean, people are going to hate this, but for me, I got to say that it helped that, I guess, wasn't it like Phil Anselmo like helped Crowbar get signed or get recorded or whatever on the first record. And I got that right when it came out, that Crowbar record, because I heard a song off of it, and I don't even remember how I heard it. I think my buddy bought it first. I'm actually the bass player in the band that I was hanging out with, and I just, the guitar's tone was just so thick and just crazy, and I liked how the vocals for Crowbar were aggressive, but clear. It was he kind of like scream sang sort of, and even though Obedience Through Suffering doesn't get as much love as their next record, like I've always loved Crowbar's debut, and so for me that was the start of it, and but it really kind of just stayed there. Like I mentioned before, I heard Soil and Green, I heard I Hate God, and I've seen them a couple of times. But other than like Candlemass and Trouble, like and like that's that kind of style, like very Sabbathy, didn't really appeal to me much. I wanted more. I wanted more speed. I wanted more aggression. So even though it wasn't like I didn't hate it, I just didn't like it enough to like buy it or seek it out or whatever. But so my only connection was kind of indirect, to the New Orleans scene for these bands, So it was, for me, it was always Crowbar. And I like Down, because we got Crowbar in there. There's a lot of Trouble risks, and also I love Corrosion and Conformity. All eras of Corrosion and Conformity. Not so much the last one as much as the earlier ones, but I still, I still even tolerate the rocky stuff they did later. So that was kind of like really it for me. So as I mentioned earlier, like it's been more of a latter era in my listening years where I've been able to give it more of a chance. And oddly enough, I think it's kind of like through listening to like the heavier types of doom, like, funeral doom, death doom and stuff like that, coming back around through all of that, and then going back to like, other doom greats, was starting to listen to Pentagram, which I got into really heavy for a while. Not as much into Saint Vitus, but I have developed an appreciation for them. Reverend Bizarre, absolutely love those guys.
I do too.
Yeah. And so it's and listening to all that type of stuff, and to a lesser extent like Electric Wizard, I really only like their debut, but I really do like that one a lot. It made it more palatable when I heard this album again, and I was able to kind of take it. And I completely hear what you're saying, Logan, and you guys in the chat with Melvin's being a huge influence. Like that makes so much sense to me. And that sort of thickness of their sound, and a little bit more of an upbeat kind of a Sabbath type thing. I saw Melvin's play at a packed club in Birmingham, Alabama, of all places. So it's a little sludgy right there. Way back in the day in the 90s. And I was so angry because it was so tight. It was like this. I was like a canned fish in there, but they killed it. They sounded great, but yeah, as soon as you guys said Melvin's now, it kind of brought me back to that show and how that makes sense in the context of this record. Now, controversial opinion here. It's when they are at their doomiest that I like I Hate God, and it's when they throw in the punk elements that I don't like it as much. In fact, my least favorite song on this record is the most punk one on here. I think these guys are at their best when they're going super slow, just really drawing those riffs out. When they're crunching along, and we'll get more into that later, but yeah. So, it doesn't make sense to you. Did Sludge and other subgenres at the time make good bell singers? I do think that sludge makes a good extension of metal, for the second part of your question, Logan. And even though it's taken me a long time to come around to it, outside of Kirk and friends, I'm glad that I'm here, because I love to kind of push my own boundaries a little bit, and challenge myself. And so I knew this week was going to be a challenge, but surprisingly, it kind of opened a door for me. So I think I'm willing to experience a little bit more. So mission accomplished. But
Well, it seemed to initially gain traction in the world. You know what? Has it gained traction? I don't know. I mean, a lot of people talk about it, and I'm a lot like Jim here. I feel like I've skirted around the perimeter of sludge. I'm know some of the bigger bands, own some of the bigger bands, but for me, I do when it's on and I'm listening to it, I'm fine with it. I like it. But I think in a lot of ways, it's similar to something like war metal. Or war metal, it's got one thing it does really well. It's got one voice. And all the bands that circle around that war metal style, they're all trying to be Blasphemy or Conqueror or Revenge. It's just rabid dog all the time. And I kind of get the same. Yep, some of these sludge bands have their own sound and their own style, their own take on it. But when they're in their world, there isn't much, especially when they're like really on that loping slow. It's like the songs kind of write themselves. It feels at times like when it's so slow, it feels almost improvised. You get into a key or whatever, and you just start playing that, the guy screaming over the top. It is like on Dopesick. One thing I liked is when the punk stuff come in, it's like, okay, it kind of snaps them out of that, I'll say rut, because it's cool. It's heavy. I like the riffs they're playing, but when the punk stuff comes in, they really do sound like a punk band, which for the dynamics and the flow of this album, I find it to be quite refreshing. But the subgenres of metal and sludge make good. Yeah, I mean, they complement each other. You got the obvious Sabbath formula in there. Although for what Sabbath did influence in the sludge scene, you have to look at Sabbath. Sabbath was a very experimental band. From album to album, they do weird stuff within the album, or they would go off and have a ballad or pretty songs or quiet songs or acoustic songs. Sludge kind of took the song Black Sabbath and added more illicit drugs to it and more distortion and filth, and kind of stayed in that pocket. They didn't really venture out much. But again, I am not super educated. There could be avant-garde sludge bands out there like Wake, that band you reviewed. They're a band that kind of is doing they're taking the sludge formula and adding some different things to it. So it's like any genre. You got the bands at the top that do the most and try to move the ball forward. Then you've got just legions and legions and legions of clone bands that are just siphoning off the least amount of work. They're just getting the sound and kind of rolling in that. And I look at EYEHATEGOD, and for being a band like they are and being signed to Century Media, I mean, granted, Century Media in 1996 was a bigger label, but they weren't what they became. But still, I always thought, oh, these guys are trying to compete with Relapse. It just had that. They're trying to be kind of, underground and sludgy and earthy like Relapse was at the time. But it kind of felt like EYEHATEGOD was the breakthrough band for a label like Century Media, giving them lip service and giving them some album deals that they were probably one of the better of the bunch, of the batch. And the NOLA sound, I've said on here before, I struggle with the southern rock style, I guess you could call it, but this one is, I don't know, they keep it punk, they keep it miserable, and they keep it mostly engaging throughout. I don't know if I answered your question there, Logan, but
Nah,
There you go.
hey, I'll take it all. And yeah, no, I think I Hate God does a good job of representing how miserable it can be in the, in the South from time to time, especially in the summer months. You know, it just feels soaked with humidity and termites. God. But no, I appreciate both your guys' answers and everyone in the chat kind of sounding off. I really just wanted to hear what it was like in the early 90s when it like broke out into the scene, if it was well received, because by contrast, when I came on to metal in like 2009, 2010, sludge was was everywhere. It was the golden child kind of. We had Mastodon with Crack the Sky, Baroness was doing the Blue record, High on Fire was releasing Snakes for the Divine. You know, there was a lot of sludge bands coming out, and of course that was probably right when the scale tipped to one side, and then we get the resurgence of death metal and I guess black metal too, and all those sludge bands kind of went away. But
So all the bands you just mentioned there, like
yeah.
High on Fire, I mean, I guess I don't even think of them as sludge. That's how uneducated I am on what is sludge and do I like sludge. Sludge is a scene. Crowbar, I wouldn't have considered a sludge band. I guess I don't think about
what would you consider those bands though? If I would be like, Marty, how would you describe High on Fire to somebody?
I don't know.
Go.
You listen to that Man's Ruin album, their debut.
Yeah.
God, that's I love that record. I think that record is fantastic. Surrounded by
Surrounded by Thieves is the second one. It's why am I
The Art of Self-Defense.
The Art of Self-Defense. Yeah.
There's just a flowing motion to that record. It's like the next evolution of Sleep, but it isn't stonery. It's different. It's just different.
That's sludge.
I think the sludge thing is the stoner element. I don't know. But yeah, you named a bunch of bands. I'm thinking, oh, okay. Like I forget that the Melvins are sludge. I enjoy the Melvins. I own some Melvins albums, and yeah, it's now that you say it, it's obviously sludge. But it's the Melvins. I never really they never fit in grunge.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily know if they fit in sludge. Do they? I don't know.
From time to time, the Melvins are one of those bands. Honestly, they probably got co-opted into sludge just because. I mean, you listen to their debut Gluey Porch Treatments, and it sounds like the blueprint for some of this stuff, with just how much feedback and reverb there is. And the Melvins always did what they wanted to, regardless of where they fit in. But I think some of us, will try to fit them into the sludge scene just because that's what they sound like at times. Which to me, sludge is you get that, Sabbath doom of Master Reality. And then you throw just a little bit of punk in there. You throw a little bit of fast, more excitement with the drums, a little bit more aggression. You amp up the substances a little bit, or you just try to make it a little more aggressive. And of course, for me, making it a little bluesier is a part of it as well. And that's largely because I associate with sludge with like the South. I mean, my big sludge scenes would be New Orleans, obviously, North Carolina, Georgia, Arkansas. Those are the big ones that I think of, and of course, California has a part of the story as well. But
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry. It just maybe it occurred to me that the bands you're mentioning. I'm like, oh shit, yeah. I guess I know more sludge than I thought.
I think you do because we have these conversations, and then you always mention, "Oh, I had this album. I love Caius's Welcome to Sky Valley." That's not sludge.
That's not sludge.
I'm just saying, you always, you say, "I don't like stoner music." Oh, I love Caius.
Oh, that's a perfect riff album. Every riff on that album is glorious. It's amazing. Great.
Do you know why I love sludge? Because it's the perfect riff music. These guys worship the riff. They like the repetitive riff. They want to just write that Sabbath riff, make it a little bit more aggressive, and they just keep playing it the whole song. I love it. It's simple. It's right up my alley.
Right on.
I guess to try to finish answering my own question, I do want and think that metal and sludge are the perfect bedfellow, and just because of how extreme sludge can be at times. I mean, when you get to albums like this, it's got to be some kind of extreme metal. When you get to Grief and Burning Witch, someone just mentioned in the chat, I I mainly also ask because I could see someone making an argument that it's not quite as metal, because you could get some bands where it's, oh yeah, we're mixing Leonard Skinner and Black Flag, where there's not quite as much of that metalness in there. So sometimes I could see people making the argument that sludge could be more akin to, the hardcore scene, because there is that influence in there. But in my opinion, metal has brought it under its umbrella, and that's where it belongs, and that's where I want it to stay, because I think it makes metal stronger for being a part of it, and it is one of my favorite styles of music. So I'm happy to call it a metal subgenre, if you will.
Sure. Yeah, it fits. It works.
The shoe fits.
All right. Well, let's talk about Dopesick's production. Logan, you're up. Why don't you roll on with that one?
I'm gonna do musicality and composition.
Oh yeah, I accidentally.
I was basically already. I was going into it.
I killed it actually on my list here. I should know it by now. There we go. Yeah, musicality and composition of Dopesick. Sorry.
A lot of what I was already talking about, man. Like mainly already touched on the influences and stuff, and the reason why this is my favorite I Hate God album, and it's because they separate out these influences to me a bit more. The punk songs are over here, the more doomy songs are over here, and then the more like intermixed songs where they're going from like they're swinging like an axe from hardcore to that doom vibe are kind of scattered throughout. Like it's just the perfect balancing of all that they can do. And you've got songs that are like a minute-long punk anthem, and then you've got tracks that are a 5-minute, almost funeral doom dirge. It's just the perfect balance, and for me, it flows a little bit more effortlessly because of that. Like I'm a big fan of their previous album, "Take Is Needed for Pain," as well.
I listened to that today. It's a little bit better production, but it's good. It's a good album.
To me, it kind of drags just a little bit more, because I wish it had more of that swinging wildly between punk and
it doesn't.
metal.
There's hardly any punk on that.
Yeah. Honestly, Jim, maybe this is the album you would like more of the two, because this does veer more into the doom and reverb side. I don't know if there's any trouble riffs on here, but it's definitely a lot doomier, and it makes you it builds up to the punk elements, but the songs themselves are a bit longer, and I just love how there'll be the minute-long punk track, and then you get the perfect bluesy doom riff right after it. Talking about secret weapons, I think the guitar work on here, I think it's awesome. I love it. Jimmy Bower, and I'm trying to remember the other guy, Brian Patton, who was in Soylent Green as well.
Yep.
Both. I mean, we're not talking about technically impressive guitarists here. They're not like doing guitar wizardry. As I said with Sludge, we're finding one awesome Sabbath riff, making it a bit heavier, a bit angrier, and then rinse, wash, repeat. And of course, here there's some punk riffs as well. But I think they add a lot of personality and uniqueness with the way that they're playing it, and they're using a lot of just elements you wouldn't expect from the guitar, which I think they kind of picked up from the Melvins. The reverb, this like they'll do like this pull or this like lean on they'll bend the note sometimes before going into a riff. Some riffs will be like just pure like pummeling chug, and then it'll go into a bluesier, more melodic guitar riff. And the variety on this album in the guitar work perspective, I think is great. For me, the rest of the band, the rhythm section, they sound like they're almost about to fall off the rails in like the best way to me. Like they're like trying to keep up with the manic swing of the guitar work, and there'll be a riff change, a tempo change, and then like a half step behind is when the drums and the bass kind of follow suit. And I always just enjoy how it feels like the whole band just like lurches from one tempo to the next, And on tracks like Lack of Almost Everything, Zero Nowhere, you can really just feel that like lurching momentum of them like picking up and following the riff as Jimmy takes it somewhere else, So I'm always a big fan of them, and I think when this band feels the most punk, it's because of the rhythm section. You know, unlike the moments from Peace Through War, Dog's Holy Life, where you just got that solid punk beat and like very simple but effective punk bass line. It's So they're a key part of the variety that makes this album unique to me. And then Mike 9, he's a character, man. I can see how he could be grating, because what has he got in his arsenal? He can scream at you, he can moan at you, he can scream louder at you, and that's that's kind of it. But to me, he's a very important part of the personality that is I Hate God. He's the front man. He's the face of just how kind of fucked up this band is, you know. And for better or worse, you want to talk about that drug-addled frontman, you know, who's always going through problems and stuff, and kind of embodies the lifestyle, the rock and roll lifestyle, the ugly side of it. He does, you know, and he's still made it through to the other side and is touring God knows how how many days out of the year. So more power to him, honestly. I mean, he's been through some tough shit, and he's still here, still screaming and still making music. So a lot of respect for Mike 9, and I can see I Hate God without him. Of course, when I was first getting into this band, he was the mountain I had to climb over to start really appreciating them. But yeah, New Orleans sludge sound personified here. Ultimate NOLA sludge album, I think, bar none.
Jim.
So musicality composition. So I guess I got to go back and listen to this again. When I feel like the upbeat moments for me on like Dog's Holy Life sound more metal to me than punk. That song in particular, I think has one of the greater, even at only like a minute and just over a minute long, has some of the most killer riffs on the record. Just super aggressive to me. And 30 seconds in, it just that main riff switches to a different one. It's like one of the best riffs on the whole record. Then you've got another huge Sabbath dose right after that, a Masters of Legalized Confusion. So all that is to say, like, for me, like, I'm not a, I don't know. I feel like, where the punk really comes through is like on that Peace Through War and Through Peace and War. And so, yeah, it's there. And I get what everybody's talking about. So it's more for me, like, punk by way of Melvins, than like a straight punk thing. And even though I like some punk, I'm way more metalhead, always have been, always will be. So that song is actually my least favorite on the record. So, spoiler alert. And yeah, I think it's when they stay in their groove, they're playing, just true, slow, Sabbathy doom, and Mike's screaming, throw it out at it, that it really comes across. I wanted to read what the lyrics were in this one, but I couldn't find them on archives. So I don't know what he's screaming about, but his song titles are cool. Dog's Holy Life, Ruptured Heart Theory, Anxiety Hangover. Those are all really cool lyrics, or song titles rather. So I'm sure if I had a physical, I'm sure they're in there or whatever. But yeah, I know he wrote like a book of poetry and all that kind of stuff. And so I know that he's a smart guy, probably, definition tortured artist type. And, and I know that his, imagery is what makes, I Hate God what they are. So yeah, I don't think that anyone ever can or even really should try to separate, him from, this band and what he does for them aesthetically and musically and lyrically. My only complaint is that, listening to his delivery, it sounds, pretty one note. It's almost like, for me, there isn't a lot of variety in the way he delivers. It's very, kind of like, it sounds like he's shouting the same word over and over, it's like, I can be a little hypocritical of that. Thou is the same way, also hailing from New Orleans. But for whatever reason, and maybe it's because like the riff variety is very like weird, and there's I think a little bit more melody in Thou. Like I actually got into them like way easier than I did that I Hate God, which seems kind of backwards, I know, because Thou can be argued as a bastard child of bands like I Hate God and stuff. But yeah, so but what, having said that, I just call that out, but it all kind of works together. It's, I kind of feel like I Hate God is greater for being the sum of its parts rather than its individual contributions. Because like Logan said, we're not looking at shred-tastic guitar players here. What is there, only like one or two solos on the whole record? You know what I mean? There's,
I didn't really pay much. I don't really think there was a solo, was there?
Yeah, I cannot confirm there was a solo here.
Yeah, on the first song, about four minutes, little 4 minutes in, there's like a quick lead that is not awesome. I actually wrote that in my notes, like in parentheses, not awesome. But not to say I could do better. I'm a rhythm guitar player. I was never a lead player. But at the same time, like, the sum of its parts is strong here. You can feel like that sort of savage intensity that Mike feels at, the, disappointment in living. It really comes through with his delivery, with his song titles, and with the riffs. Like there's just there's a darkness to it that is more, I think, anguish than anything else. You know what I mean? The rage is there, the frustration is there, but there's just this like, just this tormented vibe that you get off that comes like just kind of like smoking off of every riff here. And so it's where we're talking about musicality and composition in this way, because, this isn't a band where it's easy to say, well, at this moment, oh man, that's this riff 3 minutes in where they switch down to this triplet and they play this scale. I mean, this isn't a band that you can do that with.
No, it's not at all.
Nor should you,
Yeah.
right? And that's not what they're about. That's not what this is about. But what it is about is it's an emotional composition, right? This is a spiritual catharsis for these guys. Drug fueled as it may be, it's there, and it is like a really like, poignant expression of what they're feeling inside. And so from that perspective, it is stellar musicality and composition, because at the end of the day, what music really should mean is like, are you able to express what you're feeling and to connect with others? And so in that regard, technicality out the window, but in that regard specifically, it's a success.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote such colorful explanations from both of you, and yeah, I have to really agree with the spiritual aspect, and they're really feeling what they're playing, and I don't think the listener is a consequence. I think they're just striking out with this album a bit, and especially when you add like the quicker energy, it kind of snaps you out of that trance and into more of a punk. It feels just mean, even though as a punk band these guys are really competent and good, but it sounds 10 times meaner after something so behemoth slow, leading up to that. But I listened to this album and there really isn't anything out of place. It all fits perfectly well. Every note, in like Jim said, there's like, we often get into the triplets or the keyboards or the dynamics changes here and there, and really this isn't that type of album at all. So the fact that this album just kind of, it bleeds out as it goes, and you're kind of along for the ride on it. And it's a very well written album for the fact that it isn't, they really kind of stick with a couple different avenues of emotion, and it works. They stick with the two, and it doesn't really get boring, which my old brain was telling me back, I have not heard this in so long. Like, if I remember right, this was really boring, but it isn't boring at all. And it's just hammering. It just drags you along behind it, which is the whole point of it. And like I said, nothing sounds out of place or wrong. Even when they pick up their heads and introduce a little bit of energy and a little bit of speed, it changes it. It makes it seem even a little bit more tortured, which, kudos to them to make a largely slow album feel fresh as it's going along, fresh in a very ugly way. Thumbs up for that. Production. Let's talk about that. Jim.
Now, man, production is a highlight for me on this. Like, this thing sounds like straight out of the Celtic Frost Morbid Tales school of production.
Mm-hmm.
It just has this like really low end energy to it. Low budget, but yet just power. Like the drums sound super live. It feels like I'm in a dingy dive bar in New Orleans with the drums. So, like that's the sound. Like, crappy beer stained, sticker covered walls, like urinals with band logos all over them. And I'm hearing someone play drums on the other side. Like that's that drum sound. And I love that. It's just, it's organic. It's raw. It's visceral. Just absolutely love the drum sound of this record. The bass sound is great. It's just low and mean, perfectly complements the tonality of the guitars. There may be a tiny bit of distortion, but not much, but here that's okay. Like there's enough of just a maelstrom already, like that Mike's vocal creates, where you don't really need that much more fuzz between Mike and the guitars. Like there's fuzz enough, it's fine. The guitars definitely just low and slow, down tuned to hell and back, that's the music wouldn't work any other way. And the way that it's delivered onto, what I'm sure was 2-inch tape back in the mid 90s. It's perfect. It just sounds like they just threw like an SM58 right up to the amp and just said, all right, fuck it, man, go. Yeah. And that's great, because, if you're doing it right, then, you don't really need that much more. Right. And I feel like that they were doing it right. This is, what is, even when I saw them, even though I wasn't into the music, like I respected it. Right. At the time I was like, well, they know what they're doing, and what they do is they play their own music well. They're not going to rush out and, drop a Halloween cover or whatever. But what these guys do is their own music very well. And by all accounts, you can read everybody talking about in the chat. Yeah, man, live, they're very tight. They're very together. And through all the feedback and the distortion and all the noise that you hear on Dopesick, I think that shines through, that they're very intent upon making sure they present their own music, very, very cleanly, very well, very consistently. And it was captured in the studio that way. It's weird because the music feels like both loose and rehearsed at the same time. And what I mean by that is I feel like it's rehearsed to sound loose, but it's on purpose. I mean, like that's kind of the vibe I get. And whoever was twisting the knobs here, I don't have their name in front of me here on the notes and stuff, but I think they captured who these guys are.
Produce and mix in the autumn and winter. Phil Anselmo and Pepper Keenan also assisted during the recording process, co-producing, mixing.
Billy Anderson, I believe, was the main guy credited.
Yeah, it says, but they were uncredited.
Yeah.
The band did not want to exploit their names. It doesn't say Billy Anderson, but these notes aren't complete. So it sounds like a Billy Anderson thing. It does. It definitely has that.
That makes sense. That makes sense to me. But yeah. So not much else to say. I feel like what you see is what you get with them, and it delivers on that front. This if you're you lean more towards mainstream metal or if you only listen to power metal, this will not be your band. But if you like it to get down and dirty and you like the Melvins and you like some like really, really ugly doom, then yeah, this will turn the corner for you on the production front.
I had one more thing to bring up before Logan talks about the production, but in the composition and stuff in the album, people I think get the impression playing slow has got to be easy. Man, I think playing slow is harder than playing fast. There is a patience with playing slow. You got to be focused because you kind of forget where you're at, and there's like these little note things that they do. If you're not patient and at peace in this slow procession, you're going to rush that and you're going to jump into it too. Or there's a whole level of respect I have for bands that focus on playing slow, because it does take a special dedication and focus to be on top of that shit. Anyway, Logan, production. Should have mentioned that when we were talking about the other stuff.
I know. I mean, definitely kind of what Jim said. I mean, keeping it simple. You don't need a super dedicated couple paragraphs to talk about the production. It's live. It's in front. It's aggressive. It perfectly encapsulates "I Hate God," and
it's organic.
It
doesn't sound the album before it, "Take Is Needed for Pain," I would say was too slick.
I would agree.
They had a bigger budget apparently, and they went into a fancy studio and that polished a lot of the edges that needed to be rough.
And then maybe Century Media learned we shouldn't give these guys a lot of money. Let's just
right.
Let's just send them to New Orleans and
Yeah.
But I think it's all the better for it. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I like Take As Needed, but there's a couple things that they don't rub me the wrong way, but they keep it from being as loved by me as Dopesick, and the production is definitely one of them. I think one of my favorite parts about this album is from the moment you hit play and "My Name Is God, I Hate You" comes on, and until "Anxiety Hangover" ends, there's not a moment of silence. Everything is reverbed out. There's a squeal constantly. There's just constant guitar feedback. I mean, it's almost to me another instrument, which is really another thing that the Melvins did, was just bring the weight of like amplifier worship into the studio with them. And that's, I mean, a vital part of their live show. And to me, a vital part of their, record experience as well. Just listening to them is just being immersed in this wall of reverb and, static. And I think Dopesick captures that the best of their albums. And I just like how you can hear the fact that there are two guitarists here, because later on they become just a three-piece, and you can't of course hear it as well, but you can hear like the feedback of multiple different amps, and like when a guitar plugs in on one, and when they're both like doing the bend. So it really is a clear production, because you can hear all these like little intricacies that the guitarists are doing, and that each member is doing. So it's not like a necro cult production, but it's not clean either. It's just organic, I think, is the perfect word for it, and it fits them. It fits the punk element. I think it was cool you mentioned the Celtic Frost. I would never have heard that, but honestly, I want to go listen to Morbid Tales now, and I could probably hear the Dethroned Emperor riff could fit on this recording, and that's cool to think. The other highlight, I just love how heavy the guitars are. At their heaviest, like there is a real bottom end dirge to these guitar riffs that they swing back and forth. And then when I don't know if it's a pedal, how they go from like this just chug to like a more bluesy, like melodic riff, but they do it on a dime, and it's so cool when they change it up like that. And I think the production really just does a good job of making the guitars have this weight. And yeah, the quick highlight for the bass, I love how the bass sounds. To me, that's one of the punkier elements of this recording is the bass. The bass feel, the bass sound, especially when it opens up the song, like that Peace Through War track, it comes in really quick, like a little bit of distortion, but not too much. And yeah, but everything fits under the umbrella of that guitar reverb, and I absolutely love that. So great production.
You mentioned how they go from the heavy guitar tone to more of a bluesy sound.
Yeah.
It could be as simple as just flicking the pickup selector to the front to the neck pickup. That typically has a less gain, more of a bluesy sound, especially if they're playing like SGs or whatever. I don't know. I'm sure that's something they're playing. I haven't seen any footage of them, so no idea. But yeah, it could be as simple as just moving the pickup selector to the neck pickup, and it's a cleaner tone.
Oh, you learn something every day, and it sounded like Jimmy was only playing a 4-string guitar. So I don't know, maybe I'll try to play guitar now. That sounds. If there's only 4 strings, I could do that.
Yeah, Max Cavalera does that too, apparently. All right. We're still talking about production. Yeah, I definitely. I'm glad I listened to Take as Needed for Pain this evening before we went live, because it had been ages since I've heard that. And I was surprised at how, I wouldn't say it's a perfect production, but it's a brighter, cleaner production. So hearing, Dopesick, it sounds more like I Hate God in their natural habitat. It's produced, it's heavy. There's, like Jim mentioned, there's clarity between instruments, no problem at all, but there's just more of an organic in the room with a band really throwing down kind of sound. And they're playing loudly too. They got all that feedback squeal and shit like that, which that's the one thing I don't, my only complaint with this album, there's the one song, I think I wrote it down, but it's that chirpy, squirrely feedback. I've always hated that style. I like the more earthy feedback as opposed to the squirrely little shrill. But yeah, I do like the fact that the production, they kept it underground, but yet clear. And it really highlights the sound of those vintage amps. If they are vintage amps, I'm assuming they sound old and tortured, which perfect for this type of band and doing what they're doing here. Let's talk about least favorite songs. Jim.
So I think I say this pretty often, and probably some of our viewers get tired of hearing it, but often a good opener ends up being one of my favorite tracks on any record, if it's done right, if it's done solid. And I mean, typically if you can't open a record right, for me, like, I'm not gonna like the record. Luckily, My Name Is God is a great opener. The first thing I wrote as it kind of made its way past the broken glass and the scream is I wrote Slow Depression. And that was the first thing that I wrote, and I was like, yep, this is what we're going into here. 2 minutes later, it speeds up into a really cool riff for like 30 seconds, and then it changes riffs again. Then it has that weird sort of lead thing, like 4 minutes in, that I mentioned earlier. But just all together, I think it kind of encompasses everything that I Hate God does in one track. And it does it really, really well. And it just has a feeling like, yeah, we're opening the door, we're opening the wrought iron gate in New Orleans and letting you in, and there's no beignets on the other side. So yeah, it is one of my favorite tracks. It's a killer opener. But man, Dog's Holy Life, man, man, that song, it is awesome, dude. It's upbeat. It's heavy, like it's got some headbangable riffing in there, and it's just super brief. It's just in and out. It's grind sludge. In terms of like, how quickly it comes and goes. But it's a great song. They like like a grind song would, even though we're not talking about that here. A good grind song punches a lot in like a minute or so, and there's a lot going on in Dog's Holy Life. So don't sleep on that second track. And so I'm just going to go ahead and spoiler alert. I feel like this album's very front heavy. It's those first 4 tracks, after Dog's Holy Life, Masters of Legalized Confusion. That starts that super Sabbathy. This is when their Sabbath love comes through. And then Dixie Whiskey, that powerful, when that powerful groovy type riff comes in, it's like, it's like a vomiting SG, man. I love that riff. It's just like, every time I hear it, I'm like, yes, it really gets me. And even the title, Dixie Whiskey, like everything about it, it makes my Alabama boy roots like go, yeah, I really do dig that song. And again, super short, right in and out, 2 minutes. And bringing it back a little bit to the production, one of the other things that I want to call out, how, like Marty, you're right on point, that it is very difficult to play slow and be accurate and to do it right. It's also difficult to set your guitar up in a way when you're playing like Funeral Doom or slower sludge, like you'll hear on this record, with setting your guitar up for when it has a lot of sustain. You gotta make sure your intonation's kind of just right, that you got your strings in the right spot or the right gauge strings, because if your sustain is off, if your notes just don't ring out long enough and carry on, it's not going to sound right, when you're playing slow. And these guys really have locked that in. They know how to set their guitars up where that sustain just carries and it stays thick, even as the chord kind of shifts into feedback. Right up until that moment, like the sound is thick and then it shifts. So I wanted to call that out because I really think that's a cool element of what they do. So the middle tracks are pretty good. They're not bad, but they didn't really stand out to me as much. It starts picking up again for me on Zero Nowhere. That's the song where I hear Trouble. Like I heard Trouble on that, and I was just like, oh, just like that really awesome guitar tone, that twin attack that those Chicago Doomsters do. Like on those early albums, it's just, especially it's just a super thick sound. And I really heard that like early Trouble type sound there. And there's like a mixture of like palm muted type riffs here as well. So Zero Nowhere really, really gets me good. And then we get to Peace and War through Peace and War. And that's the one song that I don't really care for. That one is like pretty much just punk for me, and it feels like so punk, like it feels kind of awkward, like hey, we're gonna play a punk song now, and it just didn't really hit with me. Thankfully there is a slow doom riff that hits like about a minute in that makes far more sense to me, and they get to close with that, but then it changes again. But that riff in the song sort of saves it for me a little bit. But that one is the one that I don't really care for too much. I was always kind of like, well, I'm ready for this one to go away. But then we're buoyed back with Broken Down but Not Locked Up, the 9th track. Mike does this repeated crazy scream where it's kind of the same scream over and over, and just he's like spitting it at you, and it's punctuated by this like really cool down picked riff, and so that one like reamplifies the record for me, what wakes you back up. And then they close with Anxiety Hangover. First of all, I love that song title. Like someone we need a band called Anxiety Hangover. Like that needs to be a thing. It's feedback laden. It's got you know, if you listen here, like they do this chug thing, and it's almost like the two guitar players are kind of out of sync for a second, but then they kind of lock in. And whether that was intentional or not, like the way it's not quite there, but then they lock in. It sounds really cool. I think it's probably one of those things where they played it back. We're like, oh, should we redo that? Nah, it's kind of cool, man. I think that's kind of one of those moments. And I love stuff like that. I love things that they probably could have been a mistake, but then we're like, you know what, this is cool. We're going to leave it. And that's kind of the vibe I get from that. So Anxiety Hangover, the whole arrangement all the way around is a great closer. But for me, again, like the best part of this album is the front half. Those first 4 tracks are just banger after banger. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, it bookends really nicely at the end. So
right on. Logan.
Yeah. So I think initially when you're like kind of diving into this album, at least for me, it's not necessarily like, oh, all this, these songs are standing out. It kind of all blends in a little bit. Like it's more like you're along for the ride. And, because some of the songs are a minute long, others are like 5 minutes. So it's sometimes tough to kind of engage. So for the longest time, I was just enjoying it as one complete listen. And it's still kind of fun to do that. Initially, when I started diving in, the more riff-driven, like traditional Southern sludge tracks kind of caught my attention. Dixie Whiskey is my favorite song on the album. I agree exactly with what Jim said. Yeehaw. The riff, dude, the riff that just pummels it along. Yeah, thank you, James. Thank you, Marty. Is the absolute highlight and just the tone that riff has. I absolutely love it. I could listen to that song on repeat. Could be my favorite I Hate God song for sure. The other one was Methamphetamine. Towards the end, it's got that actual like very fuzzy, Master Reality Sabbath riff, and it just sounds like the more what I would traditionally expect from a stoner rock guitarist. It doesn't sound like this pissed off, angry sludge guitar player, but maybe someone who could have played in Caius. So I still absolutely love that track. And then I started to click with the tracks that kind of balance out the sound a little bit. Like for me, absolute favorite is Lack of Almost Everything. It has such an intense going in every direction sound. Like this riff just starts all over the place. It sounds borderline schizophrenic. And it just has this sustained, like, power guitar feel to it. Like, he does this bend on the main guitar riff before it comes crashing back in. And I just love that effect that he does. I absolutely love Peace Through War. Actually, it might just be because of the punk vibe to it. And to me, because it opens up with just that punk drum beat and bass line. But then when it gets to that sludge doom riff that you were talking about, Jim, that's when that's where the payoff is, and I just love the contrast between the two. It's impresses me every time. I love the two, the opener and the closer for the album. I think they're the perfect opening of the door, closing of the door. They kind of do very similar things with like they play with the slow, fast song structure. They got a little bit of everything in there, and they just sound so tortured and visceral and like the perfect representation of what this album is. Depression through substance, peace through substance, kind of. It's just great highlight. Anxiety Hangover would be awesome. Jim, do you want to start a band? I can kind of play bass. Let's do it. Anxiety Hangover.
Let's do it.
The one song that I do like, but I always had the toughest time getting into is Ruptured Heart Theory. That's like the slowest, dirgiest track right in the middle. It's about
that's the one with the
long.
squirrely. That's the one with the squirrely feedback. That I'm like, Fix that shit. I hate
And
that
that's
type
the
of
one where it's
feedback.
like you think they're like building up to one of those like, you know, transitions to a punk part, but no, it's just 5 minutes of very slow dirge, and it's impressive. I've grown to like it. Like this past week, I ended up enjoying it, and it's basically this album, but just for 5 minutes. If you can listen to Grief, you can listen to, you know, Ruptured Heart Theory. Zero Nowhere deserves a highlight. Also, kind of that schizophrenic punk stuff. Yeah, Broken Down but Not Locked Up has this very sinister guitar feel to it as well, which I always enjoyed. So I enjoyed every song on this album, though. I'll stop before I mention every song.
Yeah, this is kind of the tale of two, I wouldn't say two albums for me, but I think the slow dirgy material here, though the band is very good at it and they definitely convey a lot of emotions with that style. I think that is the lion's share of this record. For me, I like the punk side. I think that it really fit in their sound really well. I know Jim's a little tough with it, but I like punk. I was in a punk band. I like it. And to hear it in this context, it made the album feel a bit more refreshing for me. So I gravitated towards those tracks. So I didn't really name a bunch of the other ones, but we start off the album with My Name Is God, I Hate You. That's the longest song on the album, 5 minutes, over 5 minutes long. They pick up the tempo midway for a nice effect. It's sludgy for the most part, but the quicker pace embodies that filthy hardcore expression. And like I said, it suits the band really well. Lack of almost everything. Yeah, this is another favorite. The brief moments, they throw this quicker tempo in, and it makes the riff and the tempo, it makes the track feel disjointed and displaced. Like you're kind of lost, like where it's kind of disorienting the way they threw that in there. So there's a little bit of uncertainty, and then they settle on that loping and heavy ass southern groove, and they're so good at it. And hearing those two elements butted up next to each other in the track, it just made the track feel a bit more exciting. So yeah, that's definitely a favorite. Peace Through War, the hardcore tone returns. They pick up the pace again. Broken Down but Not Locked Up. Yeah, there's a little bit of a tempo change towards in the closing minute of the song, which you get through the thing thinking you're coming out the other side on a dirge fest, but then they throw in that tempo again. These little things they do here and there to keep you off center, which I really appreciated. So yeah, it's a band that relies heavily on this dense plodding sound and riff style, but when they break it up, I think it really adds to their palette and gives them a lot more footing to stand on as far as, especially live. Can you imagine the pits when those more punk things kick in? I mean, it just had to explode back then. I would never seen them live. So yeah, so let's talk about Judgment. Final thoughts. Logan, obviously you picked it.
Yeah, I mean, I love this album. I do think I Hate God are probably one of the most influential, well, the most influential sludge band of the 90s, I would say. Like, I think they really gave a face to sludge as like a metal style, like, because Melvin's never necessarily identified themselves as metal, and before I Hate God, I don't really know who else was releasing stuff like that before, because I Hate God's first demo was 89, and then their debut was 90. So I just think they gave a scene and a face to New Orleans as a musical, metal powerhouse too. And I think a lot of bands have taken influence, from them. And it's impressive just because you can tell that they themselves are just taking influence from other bands. Like, as I said, they wear their influences on their sleeves. They're not trying to recreate the wheel, but by just doing what came naturally and genuinely to them, they kind of did, in my opinion. And I think fans on both the metal and the hardcore side of the aisle can, love a band like this. In the same way that Motorhead can get the standing ovation, I think I Hate God can, be there for both metalheads and hardcore fans. Yeah, I definitely think Dopesick is a crowning achievement for the scene. It great representation of what metal was in the American South in the 90s. And yeah, absolutely. If I were to show someone sludge metal, this would be one of the first 4 albums I would get to them. It'd probably be the most extreme one of the 4, but it would still be in there because I think it's important to have that more extreme hardcore style, when you're trying to understand sludge. And definitely one of the first NOLA albums I would give to someone trying to get into the NOLA scene as well. Easily a 9.2 out of 10 for me. And then as far as their legacy goes, I think the NOLA sludge scene and I Hate God are even bigger now than they were back in the day. Like Evan was talking in the chat that they weren't as well received back in the 90s, and you hear stories of like Acid Bath touring to, not enough, like 20 people, 100 people in the venue and stuff like that, and they basically broke up with no one giving a shit. And I don't know if there's as many stories about I Hate God, that happened to them, but they just went on a co-headlining tour with Crowbar, sold out like over 2/3 of the tour. And Acid Bath has had the biggest comeback like ever. And you go to one of their shows and it's not just a bunch of old dudes just standing there and being like, nice. Do you remember back in 92 when we saw these guys? There's a bunch of these fucking kids there.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was scared to go into the pit. I wanted to, but I was scared because there's these like kids who are 16 and ready to throw their lives away on a brain injury, like running into each other. Like, yeah, no, I'm gonna choose to be able to go to work on Monday and not get a concussion. But it's impressive just how it seems like multiple generations have really glommed on to this scene, and I think I Hate God has been one of them. And they seem more popular than ever to me. I don't know if it's a social media thing or if it's because of their embracing of, the hardcore influences or what. But yeah, currently they're here to stay, and I'm happy for it.
Jim.
Yeah, with my thing, would buy, would not buy, would buy only if it was cheap. This is a would buy for me. I was very surprised that like I said, I'd seen them live before, wasn't into it back in the day. It has been decades ago, but hearing this week multiple times, listening to it over and over, it clicked with me, and I'm interested in diving deeper into I Hate God. I mean, you guys keep talking about the one before this, so I want to check that one out. Take Is Needed for Pain. But yeah, I would like to pick this up. It hits that sweet spot. Like the guys in the chat are talking about. They're like an SST band, and mentioning James G mentioning St. Vitus, which reminds me that I need to buy Born Too Late. So yeah, I think that's I'll spend some time this week doing both, listening to some Vitus and checking out more I Hate God. But yeah, I think this is one that I would like to own, and who knows, maybe Soylent Green is next. I didn't like them back in the day either, but
I had a handful of their records, vinyl stuff, and I sold them on eBay 100 years ago. I liked it. I just never listened to it.
Yeah. But yeah, this one, it connected with me this week, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to doing a deeper dive on it. So.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned it seems like they're bigger now, and when Dopesick came out, I was 1 year into doing a zine at that point. I hadn't started writing for Maniacs yet, and it just seemed like there was a bit of a groundswell, from the label anyway. There was a bunch of ads, interviews. It seemed like they were in the public eye, and maybe the public just wasn't ready for this at that time. Now they are. Times have changed, and people have been chewing on various forms of extremity for decades now. So maybe something that I Hate God is putting down doesn't seem as offensive or hard to digest as they did back then. But for me, it's been really, really kind of cool and a bit eye-opening to revisit this album. I went in thinking I'd just be a slog to get through it this week, but first listen was a little rough, but the album kind of unlocked itself as it multiple listens. So yeah, I like the fact that it's out there in the wild. Do I need to, with Jim's breakdown, do I need to buy it, go out and buy it? No, I used to own it. I had a promo of it. I don't think I need it in my collection. It isn't because I don't like the album. I don't foresee playing it that much. It just isn't in my wheelhouse that much. But if I stumbled upon it cheap, it might end up coming home with me. But 8 out of 10 all day long. It's that good of an album. I just it's not my wheelhouse. And Dopesick, 1996. That's it. And good pick, Logan. It was good to revisit this album. And whose pick is it? Is it me?
It is you, sir.
Marty.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh shit.
I listened to this a couple weeks ago and I'm like, I'm pulling this for album club, and then I realized that it's kind of long, so I'm sorry. But we're gonna be talking about Hell for Curse and Chapter, which is their second and final album. English band. It's got Andy Sneap on guitar. Check it out. Pretty theatrical heavy metal, or new wave of British heavy metal band, but they got a little bit more aggressive and a little more theatrical as they went on. So we'll be checking out Hell, Curse and Chapter, the second and final album. Show notes for Metallurgy Friday night. We have George G from George G's Room of Rock. Is that the name of his channel? I think it is. Yes. He'll be joining us for the first time. It'll be good to have him on. And a topic he came up with, which we like, is we're going to be talking about band's third album. Is it Three's a Charm, or is it Three Strikes and You're Out? We'll get to the bottom of some of these releases. And there is a review coming up for Alan by the end of the week. I should be shooting a review this weekend. I've got all the notes for it. The new EYEHATEGOD album. That's going to be pretty cool. And gentlemen, Logan, what do you got coming up on Metal and Beer Snob?
Not much currently. I gotta get to work on. I want to try to shoot a review and have a video up within the next 2 weeks or so. I'm a little slow these days, so
it's that time of year.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Jim, how about you? What's been going on?
It's been pretty quiet for me lately. Nothing to report right now, but hoping more news in the future.
There'll be news coming soon, hopefully. All right, on everybody. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed your week with Dopesick. And this crew will see you next Wednesday, and I'll see you Friday. Cheers.